Hello everyone, how are you guys doing? Welcome to episode 21 at SellerSPEAK. I'm Ram Menon, Director for Global Outreach at SellerApp. A mistake a lot of sellers do while deciding on a specific product to sell on Amazon is that they ignore the basic regulations of a product. If the product is not compliant with Amazon rules, they end up wasting a lot of money. So to give us a definite knowledge about product compliance on Amazon, launch strategy, and more, we're excited to speak to a former Amazonian with us with over a decade worth of experience in e-commerce. We have Rachel Johnson Greer with us on SellerSPEAK today. Rachel is a highly experienced product development, a market consultant with a legal background. Glad to have you on the show, Rachel.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
To give a little background about Rachel, in 2015, Rachel started Cascadia Seller Solutions with the objective of helping e-commerce sellers. Since then, her company has helped over 700 sellers and their brands with their marketplace requirements, and currently manages over 2 dozen brands. At Cascadia, Rachel leads a team which helps sellers get successful solutions of content strategy, marketing, and quality product development. In addition to this, Rachel is a brilliant speaker as well. She's spoken over a dozen conferences, including seller conferences in the US and UK, Prosper Show, as well as global sources. Her work has been featured in numerous publications. Thanks for coming on our show, Rachel.
Thank you for having me.
Hey Rachel, moving on to the questions. You previously managed important compliance departments at Amazon. You've also spoken about many regulations that the product are subjected to in the new marketplaces. So if you're talking specifically about Amazon US, what are some strictly regulated product categories that sellers can avoid? Are there any general criteria sellers need to look into to keep a product compliant?
Yeah, so you have two things that you have to watch out for with compliance. The first is upfront compliance, which is where Amazon requires some sort of document to be ungated to even sell the product. So that's something where they may ask for a children's product certificate, or they may ask for a certificate of analysis, or they may ask for a general certificate of conformity, or something like that, to where you can actually sell the product to begin with. So that's what some people are familiar with, getting ungated in a subcategory. Then you have the kind of post-launch compliance issues that come up, which are if you get some sort of customer complaint, or if someone lodges a report against you, or in some way you come to Amazon's attention, then they will send you a request saying, hey, we have uncovered this customer complaint against you. You need to provide us with your documentation that shows that your product is compliant to relevant safety standards. So there's definitely two different things. For the ungating side, they're looking at both safety and product compliance. So think of safety as things you can get sued for, and product compliance as things that the government can tell you to shut down. So the government can also tell you to shut down for safety reasons, but if you were to say import it, that's what you should be thinking about. There's certain things you have to have for documentation purposes, other things you should have in case you get sued or something goes wrong. So there's kind of two different sides of compliance there, the getting sued part, or the getting it into the country and legal to sell part.
Continue on the discussion of product compliance. Are there any criteria for how the product must be labeled and packed as well? Does Amazon require you to submit any documents or reports as proof of product compliance?
So in terms of the packaging, there definitely are packaging labeling requirements in each jurisdiction. So that could be actually different for different states. And so you do have to make sure that you're basically labeling to the most stringent standards so that it doesn't matter where it's sold. And then if you try to go into Canada, then you need to make sure it's in English and French. In Mexico, it's in Spanish. So if you happen to be selling pan North America, you just want to make sure that everything is labeled in all three languages, that sort of thing. As far as Amazon actually enforcing that, that's pretty rare. Typically, Amazon doesn't enforce just product packaging labeling. That's how people can get away with just sticking an FNSKU on something and selling it, because Amazon doesn't generally check that. Now, if a customer gets that and they think that it's some sort of fake product because it doesn't have a real label, then they're going to complain and say it's fake, and then now you've got to fix it. So just because you can get away with it doesn't mean that you will continue to get away with it.
On a follow up to product compliance, do these issues happen on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So if you do basic things like forget labeling, or have something that kind of makes people get confused, and so then they lodge a complaint against you, that's often the root cause of the inauthentic complaints that sellers get, and those happen all the time. And then for an actual product labeling issue, typically there's only a few different product types that'll get you into trouble with that, and that's anything that's food and drug related. You need to make sure that your labeling is perfect for anything food and drug related. And then anything for children. Those are the ones that'll actually get your stuff stopped at the border, that sort of thing.
On previous episode, we had a conversation with Meghla Bharadwaj, and we were discussing how maintaining product quality could be overwhelming if not done correctly. So, if you're a private label seller, what do you think are some of the principles you need to ensure that your product consistently meets all the quality standards?
Yeah, so there's a ton of existing quality standards in the marketplace, right? There's more manufacturing groups and production groups than you can shake a stick at. Somebody has a group, the National Pharmacopoeia Society, or there's some sort of group or some sort of certification body for whatever you're making. I can promise you that somebody is out there talking about it, making standards about it, saying what should be safe and what shouldn't be safe. And so they may be competing with other groups, but there's somebody out there talking about it. And so that's the first thing to do, is find out what kind of voluntary safety standards are out there, because just because something doesn't have a legal safety standard doesn't mean that there isn't a voluntary standard. And the weird thing about US law is that you're not required to have it safe when it arrives necessarily, but if you get sued, then often your insurance won't pay out if you haven't followed the safety standard. So that's kind of a weird kind of side loop that a lot of people kind of forget about, that if something actually goes wrong and you've done everything right with your insurance, they may not actually pay out for you if you haven't done the compliance testing. So that's an important element. Then there's also whole separate groups that do quality standards. So like the AATCC does a bunch of quality standards for fabrics and apparel and stuff like that. So, if you're trying to figure out how strong your seam strength should be, like, how often should it last as you're washing it, there's whole groups of people who come up with this stuff. So the easiest thing to do is to contact a compliance professional, someone who does this all the time. That's number one. Or two, to contact a laboratory. And they, of course, do this stuff all the time. So those are going to be the two folks who know the most about what you need to do. I get a lot of people who are like, oh, I talked to my lawyer and they said everything was good. Don't talk to a lawyer. First of all, they're too expensive. Second, it's not their job. They aren't there to do product compliance and product testing. They're there to assess your risk in case of a lawsuit. That's a totally different thing than product quality or compliance.
So, it's ideal to make sure your product is compliant before you start selling on Amazon.
That's ideal. Often it can be very expensive to do that. So typically what we end up doing with clients is asking them where their risk threshold is. Are you willing to accept a little bit of risk? Okay, then you need to do these two minimum. You have to do those two. These three, maybe you could get away with if you feel comfortable with that. And some people are like, I'm totally comfortable with that, and they move on. Other people are like, I will not skip anything. I need to do all of the testing. Where do I sign on the dotted line? And then they do all of the testing. So it really is dependent on your capability of handling that risk and what you're comfortable with. What I don't think is fair is when people who say, oh, private label is so easy, just go out there and do it, and then don't tell people what their risks really are, because there's plenty of things you can skip. That's absolutely a reality. You can skip a lot of things. But if you are skipping the most important things, then you could really be hurting your business.
So, you did mention about product quality and testing and compliance. So, let's say once you've submitted all the documents from Amazon, does the procedure usually take a week or 2 or 3 weeks?
Oh, testing can take as little as a week. So a lot of people think that testing is way more expensive and way more difficult than it actually is. Even for testing something like adapter safety, where if you're comfortable with bringing in something that isn't UL or ETL certified in the United States, I still recommend having it safety tested. Safety testing starts as low as $300. So a lot of times, I don't think people realize just how cheap it can be to go to a lab, especially a smaller accredited lab. Now, if you're going to like Bureau Veritas or SGS or UL or one of the big labs, you may be paying quite a lot. And I would agree those ones can be cost prohibitive. But there's a lot of small labs that are accredited, double check if they're accredited, that are perfectly happy to work with small companies and do small batch testing. So even with something like an adapter, you can make sure that it's safe to sell with, $300 to $1,200. And for most products, that'll cover you.
That actually makes sense. We know that you have developed a methodology at Amazon to test a product with the competitor's product. So, do you think it is important to have a benchmark on your product to get an idea on how to improve the product quality?
Yeah, absolutely. So the methodology that I developed at Amazon that I then carry to clients is what's called benchmarking. And this came from, being responsible for every single product Amazon produced, literally. At the time that I was managing product quality for Amazon brands, I was responsible for everything globally. And that was a lot of products in a lot of categories, and I didn't have any experience with any of it. I had previously been doing software development for product recalls and product safety. I was the program manager. I was not a product safety expert at all. And so Amazon has this policy: if you're an intelligent person and you can do your job, well, then here, take on this other job. So it's not as though they're that worried about whether you've got the experience. They're worried about whether you're a culture fit and you can learn. So have fun. So it was a little bit of a surprise going into that, how much there was to learn. And for me, I was like, there's no way I can learn it fast enough. There's just no way, because somehow you've got to learn all of the different parts. You've got to learn all the different things. And then you've got to do it fast enough to launch on Amazon's timescale. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So I came up with this process whereby we would take products from the competitor that the team was going after. So like if they were doing nice linens, then we might buy some Pottery Barn items. If they were doing, say, there were some items in Amazon Basics that were in home, and so then we went and bought the brand name version of that. Then we would send it to the lab and ask them to test to fail. And a test to fail is something that they're not very used to doing. So if you ask for that, they might get confused. And basically what you have to tell them is, you tell them, these are the 2 things that I think are most important, or 3 things, or 1 thing that are most important for this product, based on looking at the customer feedback. So you have to look through all the customer feedback and see what customers have said about it. And if there's one particular thing they're always talking about, you test for that. If there's something else they're talking about, you test for that. So for linens, it's really people talking about the linens beating up, those little bubbles thingies that come off of linens when the fabric is cheap. So that was what we focused on for that, is we would check what the pilling was. How long did it take to get to this particular level of pilling with the Pottery Barn item? And so you just have a certain number of rubs. It's actually a machine that just rubs it. It just goes back and forth and rubs it. And it imitates like the real life motion that you would have on a fabric, of sitting on it or laying on it or rolling over or whatever. So the machine's imitating real life. That's what most of these machines are supposed to do, is try to imitate what would happen in real life. Then once it got to a certain point that it reached the pilling quality that we were expecting, so you'd do like 10,000 rubs and take a picture of it. And then whatever test that we did on the fabric that we were testing, it had to match whatever Pottery Barn looked like. And so that was basically the methodology, is do the testing on the name brand item, and then make sure that any samples that we got from our supplier matched the name brand item on those most important spaces. So it wasn't about like finding some random, list of requirements somewhere. It was literally taking the competitor, testing it in key points, and making sure that our product met it on those key points. And that way customers would be happy. So there's no super special trick about it. It's just kind of reverse engineering what worked for them and trying to do it with your own product.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Moving on to the next topic about brand registry on Amazon. You've seen cases where a seller's product listing gets hijacked by other sellers who sell less quality items. A lot of these sellers are unable to prevent or report these violations successfully on Amazon. Can you tell us something about brand registry and why registering your trademark on Amazon is so important to protect your listing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few obvious reasons why brand registry is important, and it's giving you that option to report the violation. That's really critical. So one of our first clients a couple of years ago was a really high quality kind of fine spun wool clothing maker. And someone was listing from China a crappy cotton poly blend on the listing. Obviously not wool, not even close to wool, not even close to the quality. And they were selling it for like 20 bucks. They were getting negative reviews. It was a really disappointing situation. And at the time, they couldn't get brand registry because they didn't have a word mark. They had a word and a character mark. And like the way that they have it set up, it was like the symbol plus the word. And at the time when brand registry first launched, you couldn't get it with just the logo plus the name. You had to have just the character mark. It was kind of weird how they set it up. And so they didn't have the ability to take these guys off. They ended up stopping selling on Amazon because of it, because it was just a constant damage to their brand. So it's absolutely important to register so that you can file those violations. If you can't get them through the first time, go through and do it the second time. It's really important to do test buys. I know it's so frustrating to know that you've got to do a test buy and you have to give this hijacker money, but do you want them off or not? If you want them off, buy the stuff, get them off. Like just deal. That's the process Amazon set up. You just deal with it, grit your teeth, move on. As far as not having brand registry, you can kick them off there as well, but it's much harder. You do still have to do the test buy. You do still have to prove that your product is this, and you do have to prove that their product is not that, because Amazon doesn't like it when everyone's buying the same item from some supplier in China, say. So they're all buying the same widget, and then they list it once, and some person says it's this brand, another person says it's that brand, but there's no functional difference between the items. Amazon actually considers that a generic product, and they won't enforce your brand on that. So keep that in mind, that unless it's a legally registered brand, just because they're using that page, if it's the same exact product that they bought on Alibaba or something like that, then Amazon generally won't enforce it as a hijacking because it's the same exact product. So that's why a lot of sellers are like, Amazon doesn't do anything. It's like, well, is it the same thing? Because if it's the same thing, no, they're not going to do anything. It's the same thing. Until you've got a legally registered trademark, then they're not going to do anything. One more thing on that with the brand registry side. On US side, it can be well over a year to register your trademark, which is a lot of time and a lot of effort to get done. It's absolutely necessary to do, but you can get things done a bit faster in Mexico. And I heard recently that Germany had speeded up their process as well. So it's quite possible to get brand registry through a different country that's recognized by Amazon and get brand registry in the US as well.
So just to clarify, you can actually register on other Amazon marketplaces and then start selling your product in Amazon US.
Yeah, they haven't set it up to where it's per region, and I don't think that they will, because the other side of brand registry is also all of the marketing tools. And so the marketing tools are based on just having a registry, and that can be anywhere: Mexico, Canada, anywhere in Europe, India, Australia, etc.
So do you need to actually do the brand registering before you start selling in Amazon US, or is it
No.
okay once you start selling, then you start with the
It's
procedure?
totally fine to start selling without brand registry. You just don't have as much protection, and you don't have as many cool tools. You don't have videos, you don't have enhanced brand content, you don't have a storefront, you don't have the sponsored brands ads, you don't have display ads. Like, there's a bunch of cool stuff that you don't get, but I've seen people have big businesses without having brand registry.
Yeah, makes sense. So launching a new product in Amazon can be a nervous phase, even for the most seasoned sellers. You can have a high quality product, but it may drain your money out if it's not launched correctly. With your experience in helping new sellers launch their product, is there a checklist to follow to make sure you have a successful product launch strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a checklist that we've developed just to make sure that everyone follows all of the correct steps. And then we also have a process that we've kind of created a matrix, if you will, so that you can say if it has these particular features, then it's this risk level, and you definitely need to talk to a lab. If it has these features, then it's a lower risk level, and you can talk to a lab. And if it's got these ones, then don't worry about it. Just make sure it works for you. So we've basically kind of chunked everything out that way. So it makes it way easier for people to kind of have that first, I guess, gut check, if you will, to make sure that this is something they want to do. My favorite is people who always have these great ideas for children's pajamas. That's a really common one where people are like, there's not hardly any competition in children's pajamas. What a great category. I think I could make some really cool pajamas. And then I'm like, just so you know, children's pajamas are the most recalled item in the United States. So do you want to keep continuing? And they're like, what? Like, most people don't realize that children's pajamas are recalled constantly. And it's because of really basic compliance issues. There's two types of children's pajamas that are approved in the United States. The one has to pass a particular safety standard. It's basically a flammability safety standard. And the methodology for tracking that safety standard is to test it at the raw material stage every 10,000 yards, then the prototype stage for every particular number of prototypes, I forget the exact number, and then a certain number of the finished goods have to be tested as well. All of that has to happen to be legal to sell the items in the United States. If it's not, the other kind of pajamas, which are tight-fitting sleepwear is what it's called, and tight-fitting sleepwear has to meet the standard or it gets recalled, period. It's that simple. As soon as it's measured and it's outside the standard, then you get recalled. So it's a really, really easy standard to screw up. All they've got to do is say, okay, so where's your proof of raw material testing? And you're like, what? And then now it's recalled. And then if you don't have the proof of the tight-fitting sleepwear, if they measure it and it's the wrong size, then you're recalled. So tight-fitting, like, it's just crazy how very careful regulators are about children's sleepwear. But all those regulations come from when people, like kids, were sleeping in the same beds as adults, and adults were smoking cigarettes or whatever, and then they'd fall asleep, and then there'd be like a lit cigarette touching the bedding, and then someone would burn. And yeah, there's like so many of these things where it's, really bad behavior of adults or people leaving candles out or whatever. and then children would get injured. They would get injured really badly. And then, of course, at that point, then, sorry for the background noise. That was rather loud. Then at the point that the, wait a second, sorry. Okay, I think they finally shut the door. In any case, as soon as you have something that seems really empty and open on Amazon, there might be a very good reason why.
So one of the services Cascade Seller Solution offers is support for advertising on Amazon. You would have seen with sellers with winning products run sponsored ads for the first time and lose out because of mismanagement of their spends. For a person new to sponsored ads and PPC campaigns on Amazon, what are some of the mistakes you must look to avoid to get the best results of running your ads?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is ads because I love data. I like looking at the data. I like understanding where the data takes me, and advertising, especially sponsored products ads specifically, is the only place where you can see what customer search term resulted in a sale on your detail page. That's the only place where you can find that information. So advertising is pretty critical just for that purpose. So everyone should always be running a low-cost automatic ad, always. And the reason being is to see which exact search terms people are using to find your product. You need those in your listing. You need to know exactly why people are converting, and then make those words prominent for which keywords equals sales. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I see people kind of screw up on is they only ever do automatic ads. And they try to decide what keywords people are interested in themselves. Don't do that. What you should do is you should run an automatic ad and not try to control it. Let whatever happens. And then what you should do is use a tool that does reverse ASIN lookups, where you can see what an ASIN ranks for, what keywords an ASIN ranks for. So look up a competitor and then bid against all of the words the competitor ranks for. Then you can see which one of those keywords you will rank for. And that way you can see what your product actually is resonating with customers on. Because a lot of people will be like, well, my product has these 3 target keywords. And I'll be like, okay, where did you get those from? They're like, well, I think that's the most popular ones. Okay, but maybe people aren't actually responding to those keywords with your product. Maybe they like a slightly different term for it. Maybe that's what actually results in good sales. So a lot of times we find that the kind of keywords that customers provide are not what you'd normally think of. My favorite is a client who's in the shoe category, and their top keyword actually includes the word show, S-O-H-W, because W is next to E, and it's a common misspelling, right? But it's a misspelling that Amazon doesn't fix because it's a real word. So Amazon will fix the misspellings when it's not a real word, and then they'll correct it. Like if you put in like S-H-O-Q or something like that, and they'd be like, did you mean blah, blah, blah? But if it's S-H-O-W, it's a real word. And so Amazon's system will be like, okay, and I'll show you whatever results are there. And so that was actually one of their top keywords that gained them thousands in sales a month, because people just fat fingered shoe. And what they actually meant to type was shoe, but they typed show. So don't try to think ahead of your customer. Put the keywords in there that other people rank for, see what you're going to get sales on. Like, don't put in too much, like if it goes to $5 or $6 and you still haven't gotten a sale, turn it off, right? Because it's not going to resonate for your customer. Then after a couple weeks, you'll know exactly which keywords work for you. And that way it's data driven and it's not you guessing. And that's a huge thing for me is, are you coming at it from the data? Are you looking at customer behavior? Are you looking at what they're actually doing? Or are you trying to shoehorn your product into a particular box? Because as soon as you try to do that, you're not going to be successful.
An increasing number of sellers have been facing account suspension of late. You have been in the law business, you have now helped a lot of clients to reinstate their accounts. So what are some of the things you need to follow up or communicate with Amazon's legal team so they can revoke your suspension?
Yeah, the first thing you have to know is who you're talking to. It's really critical. I just started working with a client last week who we told them this particular case is from a team that's really strict. You can't do the normal reply. You need to do this and this. And he talked to somebody else and they told him, oh no, these are super easy. Just submit this document, and you'll get right back. And of course, he went with the easy one because it sounded better. People often do. And then he got rejected and got the same response as I told him he would get. And he wrote me back and he was like, I'm so sorry. I think I completely screwed up. I did this thing that this other person recommended and it was completely wrong. And they told me to send in the wrong testing information. And now I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, you do exactly what I told you to do in the first place. Send these items into the lab and we'll get the quotation. And it was because, depending on who you're talking to, even people who have been doing this for a while don't really know that much about product compliance. If someone includes the word safety, then you should double check with someone who actually knows compliance about what's going on. Don't just hire someone who's like, oh, I've reinstated so many accounts, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but have you worked on these kind of issues? Restricted products and product safety are the two that most of the other agencies that are in this space know nothing about. So most of the time we get folks coming to us saying, well, I talked to this agency and they said they could help me and then they couldn't. And I talked to this agency and I appealed 3 times and I got stuck. Just don't do that. Like, go with people who actually understand compliance. And as far as I know, we're the only ones who do compliance. There's plenty of people that I can recommend if you're talking about product policy. Like if you're talking about used, sold as new, or inauthentic, or safety incident. This is the part that's confusing. Product safety is different than safety incident. Those are 2 different teams, 2 different processes. And so, people who are outside of Amazon are just like, well, that's Amazon, right? No, there's like 6 different enforcement teams. They all enforce on different things. They all follow different procedures. And if you don't know what you're doing, you could say the wrong thing and get totally screwed. So it's really important to work with the right folks who can do this. I think there's a lot of qualified people if you have an inauthentic complaint or a used sold as new complaint or something like that. Absolutely, there's a lot of qualified folks out there. When it comes to compliance, if it says product safety team and they're asking you for testing reports, or if they're talking about restricted products, you need someone who actually understands compliance, and that's us. I don't know of anyone else out there who actually is former Amazon compliance who's out there. Lots of seller performance people. There's a few folks who come out of seller performance who are independent. And I absolutely highly recommend, like Chris McCabe is fantastic. He and his team, I used to work with them at Amazon. We were in the same department. In fact, we went out after work occasionally. So I highly recommend his team for anything seller performance related. But none of them were ever in compliance. So I don't recommend them for restricted products or for product safety issues.
So let's say your account gets suspended due to compliance issue. What is the general timeline for your account to be reinstated once you submit the documents to Amazon's legal team?
Yeah, so if your account is suspended for compliance, then you're not getting back. It's that simple. And if you got suspended for compliance and someone tells you they can get you back, then they're lying to you. Don't believe them. Don't pay any money. If you are suspended for an ASIN compliance level issue, that's much more common. The only times compliance actually suspends sellers is if it's so egregious and someone keeps relisting like recalled product, or they're relisting restricted products that they don't want you on the platform. They've already made that decision. You're out. There's no backsies. So if compliance shut you down, that's it. Don't even bother. If it's a product that's been shut down, then that's something where you need to make sure you've got all of your compliance data in order. You need your testing reports, you need certificates, you need your inspection reports, you need any factory audits that you've done, you need any sort of SDSs, you need sort of ingredient reviews. There's a lot of stuff that you could be using depending on the takedown. So restricted products has different things that they focus on. Safety has different things that they focus on. Recalls has a different thing that they focus on. And they each have a different kind of angle that they're going at to protect customers and to be legally compliant. So from each of those, individual products are fairly straightforward to do, but they're never fast. So if you ever have a product safety issue and someone tries to charge you like an expedite fee, like I can get you a response by tomorrow. Don't believe that either. You can almost never get a response by tomorrow when it comes to compliance. It takes a while to get things organized. And if you are someone who sells in food and drug, or you're someone who sells in electronics or for children's products, you're the one I'm talking to right now. Get your paperwork in order, because I can tell you it's really easy to get somebody's listing shut down if you just hire someone to buy the product and leave a negative review that the adapter caught on fire. That's it. That's all you got to say. The adapter caught on fire and there was smoke billowing everywhere. Your listing is down like right now. And now you've got to file paperwork with Amazon to prove that it's safe. Or if someone takes your children's product and they file a report that says, this thing is absolutely terrible. I gave it to my baby and they bit off a piece and started choking and started turning blue, and now they could have almost died. All of those words will get you flagged too. Now your listing is down that fast. If you don't have paperwork to show that your product is actually safe, you're going to be down for weeks, potentially months, while you're getting all that and submitting it back to Amazon.
Speaking about account suspension, we know that review manipulation is taken very seriously by Amazon. We see that this tactic is now increasingly used by sellers to send fake positive reviews to competitors' listings and then try and get the account suspended. So, what are the ways to protect yourself from this, and how can you report this to Amazon?
Yeah, so you definitely want some sort of automated review tracker system. So there's a couple that are out there on the market, and just literally just Google it, track my Amazon reviews, and you can find options that are out there. I really like Feedback 5 system. I think that one's the most useful in my opinion. I do not get any sort of affiliate benefit from them. I just happen to like their system. But there are plenty of others that are out there that might fit you or what you're looking for better. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. But that's the number one thing, is sign up for a review tracking system. The thing that's a little bit harder to see, nobody tracks like helpful reviews. So like how many times helpful has come in or not come in. So what you want to do is like quarterly, do some sort of screenshots of all your reviews. Just go in and save screenshots to your Google Drive. And so, if you can't do this because there's too many, this is the kind of thing that you would just hire someone on Fiverr for, because they can do it publicly on a website, right? They can just do screenshots and then send you all the pictures. Really easy to hire someone to do this. Just do it every 3 months, so you've got it saved somewhere. And if it happens to be, and this happened to other clients before, that someone suddenly does 100 helpful review votes in 1 month, and you have pictures of the old one from a month ago, you can take that to Amazon and see, here's what it was, here's the timestamp, see what it was before, and then suddenly someone just jumped, and you can see previously 3 months ago it only jumped by 20, and this time it jumped by 300, which is not normal. Right, then you've got that data. If you don't have proof, Amazon expects you to have the proof. They're not going to go check it themselves. That's the biggest problem here, is that a lot of their tools are somewhat poor for checking things, and so they actually don't see it as well. It's really difficult for them to go back 3 months and see what it looked like. So if you want to protect yourself, the best thing you can do with reviews is set up an automated tracker, so you have that in your email and store it, and then have someone just do screen grabs of all of your latest reviews or your top reviews every 3 months, and just have that. I put everything into Google Drive. Google Drive is great because Google Drive will never go down. You're never going to have a problem with Google going out of business. So it's not like some of the other cheaper Drive tools or online cloud computing tools where someone might leave or go out of business or whatever. Google is always going to be there. It's fine.
Moving away from reviews and suspensions, Amazon has now started introducing a 360-degree photograph across a variety of categories. These images allow users to virtually interact with the image and also look at it from different angles. Do you think the addition of these 360-degree images help in making listings look more high quality?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about it. We actually got set up to do 360 photography because of this whole situation that happened. So last year they did a beta with a couple of vendors. Like they always do it, like a few hundred vendors at most, maybe like 30 to 50 at the least. They never release the numbers, but it's always a fairly small group. And they approved it for all the rest of vendors within a month. So not only did it work really well, but they must have really appreciated the results, because they rolled it out earlier than they normally do. They usually run betas for at least 3 months, run out all the kinks, and then run it to everyone else. And this was really fast. So I'm hoping that means it'll come to marketplace soon. But even if it doesn't, they just rolled out a new feature on the storefront called background video. And it's anything from 2 to 20 seconds, and it immediately starts playing silently and loops in the background while you're on the page. So what you do is you just take your 360-degree video, you pop it into the background video, and as soon as someone lands on your storefront page, it starts going right around the circle. And so it can grab people's attention instantly. You don't even have to make them click the video. Moving things always grab attention, always. And you only have a few seconds to grab someone's attention before they hit back. So if you go onto a storefront page and immediately your most interesting looking product starts going around in a circle, you immediately have their attention where they're like, oh, what's this? It's moving. That's interesting. I'm going to go look at what that is. So you can immediately grab attention with a 360 image, and it isn't just limited to the page. You can put those right onto your storefront. It starts playing as soon as someone lands. I'm super excited about it. One of my team members literally is backed up for weeks now because I'm like, I need more 360 pictures. Give me more pictures. And he's just like trooping through it. Lots of 360 pictures to do.
That was indeed a great session, Rachel. It has been a pleasure talking to you, and I think the points you made about product development and quality testing were really insightful. For people who want to learn more about the services of what Cascadia Seller Solution provides, head over to www.thinkcascadia.com. The link is in the description below. Again, thank you for coming, Rachel.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
To all the viewers out there, if you like this video, do give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for great quality content. Follow us on Facebook as well as Instagram. Head over to www.sellerapp.com and access a 7-day free trial. Until next time.